I own a half acre in southtown Corvallis, and I also lease another half acre. And I sell my products through a CSA model, kind of a non-traditional CSA model. And I also sell at a small evening market on Tuesdays. I'm the sole owner, and right now the only employee. And I've been doing this for, this is my third summer doing this.
Third summer, like growing food on the farm, not
right.
Like third summer farm.
Yeah, third summer growing food here at this location. Second summer for growing food at my niece's location. And then before this, I was working at another farm, kind of working, interning non-traditionally, and just kind of learning for 2 years. And that provided me with a ton of experience and a lot more confidence to be able to go and do this myself.
You mentioned about how you actually, in addition to the internship, which you definitely emphasized the value of the experience, you actually went out and exposed yourself to a lot of different kinds of farms.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of maybe tell me a couple of your most important takeaways of what you got above interning and what you got from actually that tour?
I think going to different farms, especially farms that I wasn't necessarily interested in their style of farming, or I wasn't interested in their particular type of livestock that they had at their farm, but it provided me with a lot more of a well-rounded education, and it allowed me to network pretty heavily, which was wonderful. And it gave me insight on the things that, yes, I wanted to do, but of course, maybe even more importantly, things that I didn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And ways of farming that were something that I could see myself doing. And then sometimes there were things that I saw that was going on at these farms that I was like, not doing that. So they taught me a lot about what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. When I grew up very rural. We had pigs and chickens and turkeys and a huge garden area, and I really, really enjoyed all that. I enjoyed growing up that way. And then I worked in a healthcare setting for about 10 years, and I found that I was starting to become a little emotionally drained. I was becoming tired. I was a little jaded, and just I was done. And so I was kind of contemplating, well, what else could I do? I'm a nurturing person, and I was, well, what else could I do? And that farming came back to mind with growing up around farms and working on farms when I was little, and then having this homestead. And so I decided after we moved to Oregon, that's what I was going to do.
All right, cool. Yeah. I like the way that you're saying, like, you were looking for something else to do, and that you recognize, like, that I am a nurturing person. That's kind of what part of your guiding passion is. I'm trying to nurture things and simplify it, especially the emotional side. These plants aren't quite so draining and whatnot.
Right. Yeah. And then plus too, I found going through school in the healthcare world, and then working in the healthcare world, there was little to no education on diet. There's little to no education on nutrition. Even doctors have very, very little education when it comes to nutrition. And I am a proponent that food is like one of the best preventative medicines out there. Not for every single case, of course, but in the vast majority of people, if they're eating right and they have access to that food, then their quality of life is going to improve.
Yeah. It's kind of it's interesting that you're still staying on the human health, even though your field did change so drastically.
I think both my parents were nurses as well, so I think maybe it's kind of like part of my DNA now or something.
That's what you're looking for.
Yeah. Important because I really, really wanted to be on a well, so I didn't have to pay for water, because water is extremely expensive. And then either I didn't want a septic, or I wanted a big enough piece of property that the septic field, the drain field wasn't anywhere near where I needed to farm. And then this was a little less important to me, but it became more important as the search went on, is location. I wanted to be close enough to town that I didn't have to get up at like 3 in the morning to go to market. But I didn't want to be so much in town that the zoning laws made it really challenging to do anything. So I feel like my location I have now is a pretty good compromise between how quick it is to get into town, but also the zoning laws here are Corvallis, because I'm not technically in town.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask like if we were actually in the city limits. So you're outside the city limits. And I'm glad that you pointed out the thing about the septic tank. No one that I've interviewed yet mentioned it. And I think part of that's because of the urban nature of my interviews is that most people don't have septic tanks. That's a rural thing, but I think it is a good thing to point out that like it is kind of that danger. Like maybe you find a nice space and everything looks great, but half of the lower field is the leach field from the septic tank.
Right.
Well, that's not growable.
Just wasted space, and when you're working like in an urban, like smaller farm and a more urban, condensed space, you want as much space as possible. And the septic field is wouldn't work. It's important because this area, I only have a half acre. It's important to maximize yields as much as possible in a small area.
So your partner's got a job off the farm.
Right.
Do you work off the farm as well? Or is this...
No, this is all I do.
Cool. Nice.
I am not quite breaking even yet. I am so close. And maybe this year, I'm thinking that I might. If I don't break even this year, as long as things continue in the trajectory that they're going, next year I'll probably break even. And then I'm hoping in the next, I guess there was a question about goals, and my goal is in the next 2 or 3 years to be making enough money that I can, in the off season, I can take us on a vacation and pay for it out of my income.
Yeah.
And that would be nice.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So as you're talking about like the break-even point for one, it's a pretty good timetable for you're on your 3rd year, breaking even year 3, year 4. That's on the quicker side for like a new business. So that's pretty good.
I think working in healthcare has been really beneficial to me because when you're trying to sell your products, it's extremely important to have good relationships with your customers because 60% of the time, I don't know, they're not actually buying the carrots. They're buying from a small farmer, a small local farmer that they know and trust, and they feel really good about it. Mm-hmm. And they want to support, they want to see you be successful. Yeah. And so if you have that relationship with them, they're willing to pay the price of the bunch of carrots that you need in order to make money. I'm never ever going to be able to compete with Speedway or Walmart or even some of the bigger farms around here. They're so big, I'll never be able to compete, so I don't try to compete. I focus on what will work for my customers, and I focus on building my relationships with them so that they feel very secure buying from me. They feel really good about buying from me.
Yeah, you're right. That is one of the biggest things, is because it is the relationship. Because generally speaking, anybody could get any of this cheaper at whatever local grocery store. And so yeah, you're trying to show them with some of these other things like you're paying me directly, and like the quality of this food, you trust me, and we've developed this relationship, and you believe in me, and you want to support this idea.
Right, and they can come see where the food is grown, and they feel kind of like they feel part of it.
Yeah. It's more than the product or the produce itself.
Mm-hmm. You're almost kind of selling a feeling a little bit.
Yeah. Did you know? You talk about like competing against the bigger farms. I think that's something that I'm trying to kind of dig into a bit. Did you know about like gathering together in denizens before you put your farm here?
Yes, like when once I moved to Oregon, yeah, I knew about them almost right away. But putting my farm here, I didn't think about their location.
Yeah. Well, so I'm wondering about, I guess, how consciously or directed were you in trying to not compete with them? Because you're right, they are, I mean, they're small and local, but they are the giant small and local farms.
Right.
And so for you, a single person new farm, like fitting into gaining some kind of hold on that marketplace.
Yeah, you kind of have to find the niche that works for you. I, being a solo farmer and very small, I'm not going to be able to go to 10 farmers markets throughout the week. I can't sell bulk and sell for bulk pricing like they can, but one thing I have noticed is for like the bigger farms, a family, let's say a single woman who's elderly perhaps, and she only wants to feed herself, and so she wants to get a small amount of produce. She could go to the farmer's market, of course, but she wanted that produce, like I said, look for a CSA or something like that. Or maybe the farmer's market Saturday's farmer's market is too hard for her to walk to. People like her are crafts, and I saw that as population has being underserved. So once I realized, and it did take me a long time to realize that I could compete with like grocery stores, but there's no way. I just might as well just instead of farm. I was like, okay, well, I can't do that. What else can I do? I need to find something that works for me. Population that is underserved, that needs this product, but needs me, but is it going elsewhere?
What's that customer discovery like? Because I definitely hear what you're saying about finding the right niche. But some of these people, like if they're not being served by, say, the Saturday market, they're not at that market, and so you're not seeing it. And so your first customer, or all your customers, are people that you don't see until you have them already. You know what I mean? So it's almost like how did you go about finding the person?
Well, first, with Jerry, with her coworkers, there was a few coworkers that were really interested about it, and then
and they just heard about it, like Jerry was just talking that you were growing some stuff, and like, I got zucchini coming out of my ears, and they picked up and were like, oh, get some.
I work, I can't go to Saturday market, where does she sell? Could you happen just bring it to work? And so then I started selling to them, and then they would tell their friends, and their friends were like, well, I want that. That sounds good. That sounds perfect for me. I'm always out of town on Saturdays, and I don't have $600 for a big CSA, or I already travel too much for a big CSA, and can I get in on that? And then they have their friends and their parents and their grandma, and it just starts to spread out, and eventually you have people coming up to you at the southbound market that you've never met before that said, I've heard about you. Do you have any more shares open? So,
and you're like,
no,
but amazing, yes, here's my wait list, thank you.
It was very, very cool to see, because at first it seemed so daunting. I was like, there's no way, what am I going to do? To have that open up, and I was like, oh, okay, this is the population that needs.
Yeah.
I think there are a few other farms around here that are doing the same thing as myself, and people seem to really like them too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's just it makes me think of this book on entrepreneurship that I just read recently. Basically, it was talking. It's harder to go from 0 to 1 than it is to go from 1 to 100. It's a similar, having no customers and looking at it and just being like, how am I ever going to sell to anybody? No one even knows I'm here. And then you got that little break, and it finally happened. And now you're at 1, and then it just goes, and then it almost becomes a hang on for the ride and try and make it work.
And it's kind of like it's all about relationships, because if Jerry didn't speak with those people, they have a relationship, of course, but then when they contacted me, if I didn't start to build a relationship with them, they wouldn't have felt like they wouldn't have trusted me enough to recommend their parents for me.
Yeah.
Or recommend that they're friends, because they're kind of putting themselves on the line recommending me, because if I wasn't good, then their friends would be disappointed at the bad recommendation. So that word of mouth is really important. It's very helpful for me. I think probably the biggest difference is it's your baby, and nobody cares about your baby as much as you do. And you don't have just one task that you do. One, okay, at 4 o'clock I need to go home.
And then then you go home.
4 o'clock I go home. I may or may not I might think about the farm a tiny little bit here or there, but I don't have to worry at all about it. It's not my thing. But as an employer or the owner, it's always on your mind. Always. Like this past weekend, we went camping, and even while I was camping, there's times I had my phone and I was writing myself, no, I'm going to get to do this. That's a good idea. Oh, this, that. It's always, you're always thinking about it. And that kind of goes back to what we were thinking about earlier with taking time for yourself. With taking care of yourself is one of the things is if you can, to have a few hours every day or a week or whatever you can do that you aren't just thinking about it, because otherwise it really is 24/7.
Yeah. Like you need the break on both ends. Earlier we were talking about kind of more the physical break, the finite amount of energy and just doing it that you can manage, but then also this mental, like, it is your baby, no one cares as much as you, but you've got to be able to put it down sometimes.
Yeah, and it's not a crazy amount of time, but just a little bit, just enough to breathe.
Breathe for a second, do a couple of things, and know that the plants are still going to be there, and you can come back and get right back into this endless treadmill and go again. And
sometimes when you're not doing stuff that's related to the farm is when you almost are inspired for better ideas at the farm. And so that's a reason you're going to an exercise class or going on a hike or camping or whatever. That a little tiny time away, a little tiny time off farm, it's almost kind of free where you can take more inspirational ideas and take them back to the farm. But sometimes what's the phrase there? You can't see the forest for the trees.
Yes. Yeah.
When you take a step back, you can see the forest.
Do you have you don't have to, but like, do you have an example that you can think of? Like something that struck you while you were not here?
I think one of the things, this is kind of going back to finding my niche, is I was selling onions, and I had a lot of onions, and I was selling them at a low buying rate, and then someone came and started selling onions too, and they were selling onions significantly cheaper than me. So I remember at first being like, well,
that sucks.
Shoot. But then I can't remember what I was doing exactly, but I know I wasn't on the farm because it really was like a eureka moment. It was like, wait a minute, they're selling like 25 or 30 pound boxes. Not everybody wants that much. I will sell 10 pound boxes. 10 pound boxes is worth it for them. But for me, I could sell 10 pounds. Yes, I sell it more expensive, but there's a lot of people that are willing to pay a tiny bit more because the convenience of only having 10 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I sold out.
Nice.
So that was nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So that was like, I remember, I think maybe I was driving or something, so I do remember being like, oh, I got it. I know what to do.
We're going to turn around and go home later. Cool. Yeah. And it's going back to the like, I mean, you said again, finding your niche. Just they're the big ones in the marketplace, and so you're slipping into places that aren't worth their bother. In-town boxes, they can't. Their system isn't set up to deal that small.
Right.
You can do whatever you want. You're geared small. Like, if they thought they were small,
What's the definition of a small farm? It's like 300 acres.
Right. Something insane. Less than an inordinate number of acres.
That's how I call myself a micro farm.
Micro. Yep. We need something. Something more because.
Of course, profit is expensive, and a lot of times I think because this is my house too, or when a farmer lives on their property, not leasing like a farm somewhere, they actually live on site. You forget there are expenses like your mortgage. A huge part of my mortgage is actually business expense. Electricity for my coolers, for my heating pads. When there's just a lot of things like when I'm processing the jams and jellies, like the electricity for the grates in the kitchen and the stove, and then of course your time, because you should factor into your prices your time and how much you need to give yourself a wage. A lot of people get kind of uncomfortable with that, like they feel like I should be the poor starving farmer, but you should factor in your wage.
You should, because otherwise you're gonna be a poor starving farmer.
Right, you're just, again, if you're not making money and it's not a small business mindset, you are homesteading. Yep. So of course profits and expenses they track. But then each year I have something a little bit different that I like to track. For instance, this year, because of the property I was leasing, the last 2 years, I hardly got any fruit from that orchard because the orchard was overgrown, the trees had been pruned, they hadn't been fertilized, there was no water set up to them, they were struggling. So I spent the first 2 years trying to rehab that, and then this is the first year that I can actually pull a significant amount of fruit. So I really want to make sure that I get how many pounds of fruit from each tree, so that way I can track that for the next few years and see if my efforts are worth it, or are they not? Am I getting, let's say I get 50 pounds for every seed, and then next year I only get 5 pounds, and I realize, oh wait, it's a tree that's biennial. Okay, but the next year I get like 50 pounds, and I'm like, oh, okay, so all my effort is paying off. I'm getting consistent yield each year. It wasn't just a fluke, like my efforts are paying off. I think my biggest things of advice would be to experience as much as possible now, because once you are into something, it's a lot harder to change. So try out a bunch of things now, because now is an okay time to change. I mean, I have a customer base, but if I change, it's not customers who have been with me for 10, 15 years, and all of a sudden doing something drastically different. Now is the time when you're first starting out that you can try a bunch of little things, and if you fail, it's okay. It's more than okay, because you're learning from that. it's much harder to fail when you're 20 years in than it is when you're first year in. And then also to try a whole bunch of new things in regards to like learning from other farmers. But there is a fine line between trying a bunch of new things and then trying all those new things all at one time. It's important to try new things, but not try 20 new things in one season. Because then you spread yourself too thin. You know how you're talking about, you have finite mental, physical energy, and you'll burn yourself out. And when you burn yourself out, you can't show up to your customers and be there for them and like market and do those things that you need to do because you're just so tired of 20 things on the farm that you have. I started off with just like 3 raised beds, and I started off planting things that I knew I didn't necessarily have to explain or market, you know, things people understand.
Yeah.
And then in each year I tried 1 or maybe 2 new things. So that first year, there's some things that you want to do right away. For instance, I knew for sure I wanted fruit. I wanted an orchard. But I also knew that fruit is really, really hard. A lot of things love fruit. A lot of viruses, a lot of bacteria, a lot of fungus, a lot of insects. Everything loves fruit, and it's fruit trees are really hard. So I didn't want to have like 20 fruit trees, but I wanted some. But they take a long time to grow, so I planted those first. So
Get them in the ground, give yourself like a 5-year, 10-year lead.
Right, yeah. Kind of have to decide for sure where you want them, though, because once they're in, they're in.
Yeah.
But then I would try like 1 or 2 little things, like, okay, well, I'll get chickens. And my first year, I only had 5 chickens. They were manageable. I could figure them out. I wasn't overwhelmed with that. And then the next year, I added on a bunch more raised beds, and I would try a couple more new things, I'll put in some asparagus. I'll put in some raspberry bushes and just kind of expand. And then this year, I expanded to a high tunnel. So I knew the high tunnel was going to be such a learning curve. I haven't added on anything else. And that second year, I also got the property, so that was a whole other piece of land. So each year, just something that I'm like, a little uncomfortable. It's out of my comfort zone. It's a challenge, but it's a challenge that I can actually see myself doing, and I'm not setting myself up to fail.
A manager, not. I just got 5 beef cattle,
right?
And I'm gonna figure it out. Like that's great.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I've been doing it this way for a year, and now I'm going to lease a 25-acre property and put in 20 acres of onion and 5 acres. I'm going to
hire a dozen people.
Yeah.
Do 1,000 new things.
Yeah.
What about like some of the crop protocols? I think that's an important thing to point out. Is like making your choices there so that you aren't explaining it to someone, so that you can sell. I can sell broccoli because people will just buy it, but even something like Romanesco, which is almost basically broccoli, is suddenly. Oh, well, and it draws them in for sure. Like, it's visually quite captivating. But now it's a different battle. Now, like, you get to talk to them, and you can build a relationship, and maybe that's good for you, but it's taking your time, you're talking to them and explaining to them. And at the end, they might not even buy it anyway.
Right.
So,
trying to convince the early adopters to take on something like that. Not a lot of people, even when it's something as simple as a vegetable, other people don't want to take that risk. They want to have heard about it first. Two things.
sure.
One is land costs. It is, for a lot of people, it is pretty cost prohibitive to get into owning land. But I've heard of a lot of people being really creative with leasing. Very creative with how they're doing that. Then second, I think, is climate change, because from farmers that I've talked to, they said they're like, we kind of feel sorry for you because you haven't experienced a typical Oregon summer. And I don't quite even know what
they mean.
Yeah, because I've only been here for 5 years, so I don't know what they mean for sure. And they would typically talk about like in January, at the end of January, there's a 2-week period that it will dry up and you can till. And it's been several years.
I was gonna say, I've been here about 5, 6, something like that years, and what are you talking about? It doesn't stop raining until like May.
There's always this like, this 2-week period. It dries up enough, you can till, and then it starts raining again. And they're like, when is it coming? When is it coming? When is it? And I don't know, you guys, are you really telling me the truth here? And just stuff like how they said they would used to just freak out if it got into the 90s or especially the hundreds because it never happened. And now consistently it's hot and dry.
We had almost a week of like 90-degree weather in June, like early June or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then it went.
And then it dipped away, and then it was gone again for a while, which has also been crazy. Like that made me want to plant all my like tomatoes and stuff. I'm like, I gotta get it out there. And then no, hold up, Michael. Your thermometer in the soil, it's like 40 degrees. Check the night, it's like 40 degrees. Like I guess we're got a ways to wait, but yeah, it was.
Yeah, they're
been strange.
And it's just been strange. A lot of things. Like flooding this year and. This isn't here, but I know in Michigan there was also a lot of flooding. Here there was a lot of flooding too.
There's flooding in Colorado this year.
Yeah, several farmers here that I know that they are about 6 weeks behind me because they couldn't do anything. Mm-hmm. It was too bad.
Yeah.
And I know in Michigan, I grew up, like I said, there's a lot of farms around me, and some of the farms there, they had crop insurance, like crop loss insurance. But you don't get reimbursed if you never planted a crop. But they couldn't plant a crop because it was so wet.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of people like trying to figure out loopholes. Like, could we just plant a crop and have no reason to fail so that we can get reimbursed?
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh man.
Because a bag of seed isn't cheap, but it's cheaper than
complete loss.
So just like the variability of unreliable.
The weather, yeah. Big girl. Again, I stress this a lot, but like with networking, if you can find a mentor that you can trust and ask questions, because a lot of people, again, it's your baby, and a lot of people who don't own a farm don't understand. And sometimes they think they understand because they have a garden, but if they've never sold for profit before or sold at a scale, like even my scale is so much bigger than people with a home garden. It's nice to have a mentor where you can talk to that person and bounce ideas and trust them. But it's also nice with the networking, it's for stuff like that you might not think of on the business side of having a farm. For instance, when you have a real estate agent, a lot of real estate agents are just turnkey ones, which is perfectly fine if you're purchasing a home in town. But when you're trying to find a home that's going to be your small business, and there's a lot more to it, you need to find a realtor that understands that a little bit more. And that can be applied to like an accountant that understands, an insurance agent that understands.
That just all have at least an awareness or an appreciation for at least some kind of farming or agriculture, and hopefully even maybe a small farm.
Right, that understands like, well, okay, yes, a business at my house is a little bit different though because my whole property is the business, not just my one office in my.
I see. Yep. It's not just an extra bedroom converted into your home office and that's a small tax write-off. It's like, no, I live there.
It's the whole thing.
Everything. It's all.
And then little stuff like, do do you run electricity to this outbuilding? Do you like having all your outbuildings insured? When you have your home, sometimes you do, but there's just a little bit more. If you're a homeowner and your shed burns down, it's extremely unfortunate, but it might not be a profit loss for you.
Yeah.
There's things in there that you will lose, of course, but it's just different.
Yeah.
Or to know what a high tunnel is, or to know about liability, and the difference of liability of somebody stopping at a roadside stand versus doing farm tours versus doing cheese making class or something like that in your home. So it's important to have professionals that understand and can talk to you about that, having some experience with that, versus you having to educate them, and sometimes unsuccessfully because they just don't have the experience.
You have a more unique story of getting your high tunnel funded than I've heard elsewhere.
Oh, yeah, I went through a grant program, which I belong to the Willamette Women's Farming Network, and I got an email about this grant, and you could apply, you could put anything you wanted, and it was just a short little application, so it was really easy. I explained what I wanted, I gave a bunch of info about my farm, I assessed how much these types of things would cost, and I filled all that out. It took me a couple hours to do my research and fill it out. And then after that, the grant, because I wasn't part of their co-op, I could participate in the jury grant, but I could participate in the popular vote grant. And anybody in the whole world could vote for you. And it was anybody in the United States could put forth their application. And so I hustled really hard, and I got fourth place. And so I got $4,000. So for that $4,000, I purchased a high tunnel. Eventually, it was so inspiring to see how many cheerleaders that I had and just like small bars had, because people I didn't know were sharing it and passing it along. And I have friends in some different countries, and I passed it along to them, and they translated it and passed it along to their friends. And so it was definitely a group effort. And it was really exciting because as you voted, you could see the uptick in votes. Oh. And you could see everybody else's uptick in votes. So it was almost like a competitive, hey guys, there are only 50 votes ahead of us. We could do this. Talk.
Find 50 more people. Find 51 more people.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it was out of my comfort zone, and it was challenging. But it was worth it because the voting was from January 1st to January 31st, so there's a whole month's worth of hard work, but I got $4,000 out of it. So.
What has the hoop house done for your farm?
It's given me a lot more produce. It's increased my yields, and I'm also, like, for instance, peppers here I have a real challenge with. It does get warm enough on this piece of property, but the wind and the cool nights, it's so exposed that I never did well. And this year they're doing exceedingly well in the hoop house. And it's really helped me. I think the biggest thing is increase the yields because the plants aren't stressed.
Okay. Almost more the wind protection than like the temperature.
Especially when they're just starting out, they're small, they're trying to take root. With the wind constantly hitting them, it was kind of a challenge.
Cool. That's exciting. And you got that just this year?
Yeah, I got it built in March, I think.
Wow. That's awesome. That's exciting. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be even more fun, this next winter when you get to sit down with all your plans and you're like, but wait, and now there's this whole extra valuable, extra productive area that I get to make even more important decisions about.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Exciting.
It'll be good. And it'll be nice, too, to be able to grow lettuce in the winter. Mm-hmm. Even if it's just for us, but just something. Some of these older crops, I could put another layer of plastic, like put a tiny little like low tunnel, and have like 2 layers of protection.
Winter crops. I mean, you might not get sales out of it, but if you're growing it for yourself, for one, that's more experience to where the next new house you put in, then you can go for sales, and then otherwise, the classic, just everything that I grow, it's something that I didn't buy. That's still money saved. Maybe
put in like 3 or 4 lettuce plants, and it's just for us. And,
Could you talk about like the interaction between your farm and the urban environment, or why? You spoke a little bit before about wanting to be out of town enough that you didn't have to deal with it, but also be close. Are there other factors that affect your farm, either your production or your sales and things like that, because of the city?
It is nice because it's not a barrier to people. Some people actually still think I'm kind of far out, but they're in the minority. Most people don't find it to be a huge deal to come and pick up their CSAs from me here. And then the zoning is really important. The closer you are into town, the more restrictive it becomes. And that's an important factor. But the people here, it's been really, really wonderful. The community in Corvallis is extremely supportive. They seem to like really like having some around them. And so a lot of the laws, and then the zoning of course too, but a lot of the laws are skewed towards the benefits of the
You told me about when you first moved in here, or before you quite moved in, you went and asked the neighbors to make sure that they were okay with it, and they were ecstatic to have you.
Right. Yes.
So that's
I asked the neighbors before we purchased the land because
Code enforcement is mostly complaint driven.
Right.
I mean, the codes are all there one way or another, but unless someone calls, no one's really patrolling unless somebody calls and reports you.
Right.
You told me one of the downsides of being close to the urban environment, that shed that you had out there was your kind of labor-free pickup zone.
Right.
For a while, you had a farm stand of sorts.
Yeah, and I thought because I was right on a main road and so close to town that it would be really convenient for people to purchase from me. And I did get a handful of sales, and however, I didn't advertise it. I didn't push it at all. But the first year I had 0 theft, and people were really surprised. And I was like, well, maybe I'm far enough out that I'm not getting. The second year, produce was being stolen. And I thought, well, maybe it's somebody who really needs it. There's a lot of hitchhikers that go up and down 99. So I thought, well, maybe they're hungry. Okay. And then this year, when I first started, they were stealing eggs, and they were stealing jam, and
high value.
Yeah, high value added type of products that I was just like, oh, I know I worked really hard with the produce, but at least I can find it in myself to say, okay, they're hungry, okay. But they didn't need to steal jam. They didn't need this. What are you doing with raw eggs? You're not eating them as you're walking. It's not like you stole
sucking down raw eggs.
Yeah, it's not like you stole a cucumber because you were so hungry.
Carrots or anything else. Yeah. Not that you can't have jam, but damn it, money. Costs money.
You didn't really need that jam.
How much added value are you doing? I presume that you're staying within the cottage laws, right?
Yeah, for sure. I sell jams and sometimes pickles, but I sell at a few holiday markets in December.
Okay.
And that kind of gives me some income in December. And I stay within the limit. I think it's like 5,000 or something.
5 or 10?
Yeah, it's really high, and
Yeah, it's like it's high enough that if you're not trying, you're not gonna have to worry about it. But it's definitely low enough that like, if you're getting into it,
Right.
then you're gonna quickly sit past it.
No, I don't put past it at all. And everything that I make, I grow. Too. So I am a little limited on that sort of thing. I can't do like a peach preserve or something weird with peaches. So I have my limits. So you
That's still, it's nice to kind of have the product kind of rounded out, and those are also kind of the things that we mentioned are like add on to your purchase. They come up and they get their box of veggies and it's kind of like, yeah, let's get a, whatever kind of strawberry cake or whatever.
Yeah, and I tell everybody about the add-ons, and probably one CSA a week will add something on. It depends on the time. Usually it seems like, of course, holiday. Of course, around Christmas time, everybody wants it, and it seems like in the first part of spring, people really like it. But I think in the summer, it definitely dips down. But that's probably because I'm assuming there's so much fresh vegetables, fresh fruit that.
This isn't the time for preserves.
That isn't time for like warm piece of bread with strawberries.
I'll just eat strawberries. Like I don't need jam. It's dead of winter when I'm like, I want a strawberry. I haven't had a strawberry forever. And then I get your jam, and it actually tastes like strawberry and not sugar.
Right.
Cool.
I think one of the things that a person who wants to get into farming needs to know is that Mother Nature tries really, really hard to break you, and it can be.
Is not one of your supporters.
No.
Does not want to see your
Mother
success.
Nature is actively working against you.
I can't remember who it was, but somebody said, if you've heard nature abhors a vacuum, someone adapted it and said nature abhors a garden.
Yeah. Mother Nature is not your friend. It's more like a frenemy. And but to keep, if you're doing everything right and you're seeing improvements and you're looking at your metrics and those metrics are improving year to year, you are doing something right, and to keep going. There's going to be a lot of, it's sometimes in the same day, a lot of high highs and then low lows. Like, oh, this is wonderful. Look at this huge cherry tomato yield today. Wow, I'm getting so many pints. Wait a minute. Why is my melon leaves? Wait, they're all dying. Why are they dying? And then you just turned around and you went from one thing, you went from this great, like, oh, look at what I did to, oh no, what is this? Why are you yelling? Why are you yelling? Why are you yelling?
Oh my God. Drop everything else and you figure this out. I don't even know what the problem is.
So high highs and low lows, but at the end, this has probably been my hardest job. The job that, admittedly, that I probably shed the most tears doing. It's been physically and mentally very, very challenging, but so far, even with all that, I've been the happiest doing this job versus any other job.
Getting
It's worth it.
a lot of value there.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.